Let's face it, when someone starts pulling away or goes quiet, your instinct is to reach out. You want to close the gap, fix the silence, and remind him what he's missing. But here's the truth. The more you chase, the more he retreats. The key isn't in saying more, it's in saying just enough and saying it right. In a world where everyone's glued to their phone, the way you text can either come across as needy or unforgettable. The difference is subtle but powerful. It's not about tricking him into missing you. It's about reigniting his emotional memory, reminding him of your worth and letting him feel the absence that creates desire. Here are 3 simple but powerful texts that shift the dynamic and make him start to feel what it's like not having you around. When someone pulls away or starts to become distant, the first thing most people want to do is fix it. We feel the absence and it makes us uncomfortable, so we reach out, we try harder. We text more, we over-explain, we try to show our love or affection in hopes that it'll spark something back in them. But what we don't realize is that most of the time, that very effort becomes the thing that pushes them even further away. Desire doesn't grow in closeness, it grows in space. When someone knows they can have you at any time with no resistance, no pause, no mystery, then the natural urgency to reach for you starts to fade. Emotional distance, when used wisely, isn't about manipulation. It's about allowing someone the space to notice what's missing. You become a presence that's felt more deeply in your absence. We live in a world where everything is instant. Messages are sent in seconds, replies are expected within minutes, and silence feels like rejection. But silence is powerful when you're grounded in self-worth. Not hearing from you is only scary if he believes that he might actually lose you. And that thought that he could lose your attention, your affection, your presence, that's where desire begins. When you always initiate, you teach him to expect that you'll be there no matter what. He doesn't have to do the emotional lifting. He doesn't have to wonder. And if he doesn't have to wonder, he doesn't have to miss you. Because missing someone requires uncertainty. It requires curiosity. It requires not knowing what's going on in your world and wishing he could be part of it again. The irony is that the very effort to be close can sometimes erase the very feelings we're trying to spark. A man starts to miss you when he senses a shift in your energy. Not coldness, not hostility, but calm, quiet, self-assuredness. You're not chasing, you're not punishing. You're simply unavailable in a way that feels real, not strategic. You're not trying to get a reaction. You're living your life, and that is the magnetic part. Think about this. When was the last time you missed someone who constantly reminded you they were around? Probably never. You don't miss what you already have unlimited access to. You miss what feels valuable. You miss what feels meaningful but isn't always guaranteed. And that's what you become when you stop chasing and start honoring your own emotional space. This isn't about disappearing, it's about repositioning. You're not playing hard to get, you're hard to forget. Because instead of being in his inbox every day trying to win him over, you're giving him the gift of absence. And with that gift comes reflection. He starts to think, he starts to feel, he starts to wonder why the energy shifted. And if there was something real between you, he'll begin to realize that he misses what you brought into his life. There's strength in restraint. There's attraction in self-possession. When you show that you're not afraid of losing someone who isn't showing up for you, you subtly communicate your value. It's not said directly, but it's felt. He starts to sense that you're not waiting around, and if he has any depth of emotion toward you, that fear of loss will ignite the very feelings you've been wanting to experience from him all along. And the best part? When you let go of the need to constantly reach out, you give yourself the space to reflect, to remember what you want. to decide if he's truly showing up in the way you deserve. So the emotional distance you create doesn't just serve to make him miss you, it also brings clarity to you. Begin to see what happens when you stop filling the space. Does he step in? Does he notice? Or does he stay silent too? That reaction gives you everything you need to know, because the man who truly values you won't stay distant forever. He'll feel the weight of your absence. And if he doesn't, then maybe the distance was what revealed the truth. Either way, you win. There's something powerful about a memory. It's not just an image in your mind, it's a feeling. It's the way someone made you laugh at the wrong moment, the way you felt when they looked at you a certain way, the way your body remembered their presence even when they weren't around. And that's where texting, when done right, can tap into something much deeper than words. It can tap into emotion. Most people send texts that are transactional. How are you? What are you doing tonight? Did you see that movie? These messages are fine, but they don't linger. They don't trigger anything meaningful. They get skimmed, maybe responded to, and then forgotten within seconds. But a well-crafted message, one that connects to an emotional memory, that kind of message sticks. It doesn't just show up on his phone, it shows up in his heart. Imagine sending a message that isn't about starting a conversation, but about sparking a feeling. Something like, just past that little coffee shop we found on that rainy afternoon. I forgot how much I laughed that day. That one sentence does more than talk about coffee. It pulls him back into a moment. It reminds him of how it felt to be around you, not just what you did together. It makes him remember the emotion attached to the experience. And that's what creates longing. When a man starts to feel something again, especially something unexpected and tied to a good memory, it disrupts whatever emotional pattern he's been in. If he's been distant or distracted or unsure, that text becomes a quiet nudge towards something familiar and comforting. It reminds him that there was something special between you, something warm, something worth revisiting. The goal isn't to manipulate, it's to remind. Because when someone pulls away, it's usually because their focus has shifted. Life gets busy, emotions get cloudy, distractions take over, but memory has a way of cutting through the noise. A moment that once mattered can resurface at just the right time, and suddenly everything feels a little clearer. He starts to realize that it wasn't just about shared interests or physical chemistry. It was about how you made him feel about himself when he was with you. When someone misses you, they're not just missing your presence, missing the feeling they had when you were around. And if you can use a message to bring that feeling back, even for a second, it opens the door to connection. Because people don't chase words, they chase emotions. They come back to what makes them feel good, safe, alive, inspired. But here's where most people go wrong. They try to trigger emotion by being overly dramatic or vulnerable. They overshare. They confess too much. They say things like, I miss you, or I don't know what happened to us. And while these words might be true, they often create pressure. They put the other person in a position to respond out of guilt or obligation, not desire. The beauty of emotional memory is that it's subtle. It sneaks in the back door. It doesn't demand anything. It simply reminds someone of what once was and lets them sit with that feeling. It plants a seed and then steps back. That's why the best messages aren't confessions. They're reflections. They're light, nostalgic, slightly playful. And most importantly, they're rooted in confidence, not need. There's something disarming about someone who can reference the past without clinging to it. It shows that you're not desperate to go back. You're just someone who honors what was real. And that energy is rare. It makes him think. It makes him remember. And often it makes him reach out. Not because he feels guilty, but because he genuinely wants to feel that again. It's not about the number of messages you send. It's about the one message he can't stop thinking about, the one that hits different, the one that makes him stare at his phone a little longer than usual, the one that makes him open up old pictures or scroll through past messages just to reconnect with a moment you casually brought back to life. And when that happens, when you've triggered that emotional memory without trying to force anything, you've done something powerful. You've reminded him of your presence in a way that feels safe, beautiful, and personal. You've become more than a name on his screen. You've become a feeling he wants back. There's a misconception that in order to get someone to think about you, you have to say a lot. Long texts, detailed confessions, deep vulnerability poured out through a screen. But in reality, what often makes the strongest impact is the opposite. Low effort messages that carry high value energy. These are the texts that don't scream for attention, but demand it simply by the way they're delivered. They don't beg for love or validation. They come from someone who already knows they're worth missing. When you come from a place of confidence and calm, your energy shows up in your words, even when you say very little. That's the difference between texting someone to get a reaction versus texting from a place of assurance. One feels needy, the other feels magnetic. One makes him feel pressure, the other pulls him in without him fully realizing why. A short, playful message like, "I just saw something that reminded me of you and laughed," says more than a 2-paragraph confession. Why? Because it gives just enough to intrigue without laying everything out. It holds back on purpose, not to play games, but to communicate that you're not trying too hard. You're letting the connection speak for itself. You're showing him that your presence is still felt, but it's on your terms now. That kind of message hits differently. It from a place of need. It comes from a place of emotional strength. It's light. It's flirty. It leaves a little question mark in his mind. And that question mark is what leads him to think about you more. Wandering is one of the strongest forms of emotional engagement. If you give him all the answers, he doesn't have to think. But if you give him just a taste, he'll want more. High value energy also means you don't chase responses. You don't send a follow-up an hour later asking, "Did you get my message?" or "Why are you answering?" Instead, you trust that your message landed, and if it didn't trigger something meaningful in him, you're okay with that. That self-trust is powerful because men can sense when a woman is secure in herself. They feel it in the way she communicates. It's not just about what you say, it's about the tone behind it. When your message sounds like you're good either way, it shifts the dynamic completely. Suddenly, he's not in control anymore. You are. Because you're not waiting by the phone. You're not refreshing your inbox. You sent the message and now you've moved on with your life. That energy creates tension, the good kind. The kind that makes him curious, maybe even a little uneasy. And that's when he starts to miss you. People chase what they feel is slipping away, but they don't chase what's already clinging to them. If your texts feel like you're trying to hold on to him, he'll back away. But if your texts feel like a breeze, light, refreshing, and unexpected, he'll lean in. He'll reread them. He'll try to decode the tone. He'll imagine what you're doing, where you are, and why you seem so unbothered. that mystery becomes attractive. Even a simple message like, "Was thinking about that ridiculous joke you made last month. Still can't believe I laughed at that," does more than just reference a memory. It plays on two layers: humor and connection. It says, "I remember you," without saying, "I miss you." And that distinction is key, because when you don't directly say what you want him to feel, you give him space to feel it on his own. This kind of texting is about emotional precision. You're not overwhelming him with words. You're choosing just the right ones with just the right timing and letting them breathe. You're not trying to rush the response. You're not looking for instant validation. You're showing that you know your worth, and whether he shows up or not, your world keeps turning. That attitude makes him feel something he didn't expect: the fear of losing someone he can't quite replace. And here's the thing, this doesn't take effort. It just takes a shift in mindset from chasing to attracting, from convincing to inviting, from trying to be enough to realizing you already are. When that's your foundation, every message you send carries weight, even when it's just a few words. So don't underestimate the power of a short, confident, emotionally tuned message. It may not say much, but it says everything about you. And sometimes, that's all it takes to make him stop, think, and realize he misses you more than he thought. There's a delicate dance between presence and absence in any relationship. Too much of one can kill attraction, and too much of the other can breed distance. But when you strike the right balance, when you mix availability with just enough mystery, it creates a magnetic tension that keeps someone emotionally engaged. This is especially true when it comes to texting and modern communication, where people often assume that if they're not constantly visible, they'll be forgotten. But the truth is, absence paired with meaningful presence is often the most unforgettable thing of all. When you're always available, always replying, always initiating, you become part of the background noise. Not because you're not valuable, but because humans naturally start to tune out what they constantly have access to. You think about it, the songs you love the most eventually lose their magic if they're played on repeat every hour. Familiarity is comforting, but it doesn't create longing. Longing happens in the space in between. It's born in silence, in unanswered questions, in the moments when someone realizes you're not there and starts wondering why. This doesn't mean you disappear completely or go cold. That's not connection, it's punishment. What it means is that your energy becomes intentional. You show up in a way that feels real, grounded, and emotionally full when you do engage. But you don't try to fill every gap or force interaction when it's not being reciprocated. You allow absence to do its quiet work, building value through scarcity, letting your presence echo in someone's mind even when you're not speaking. This is why those who give too much too often feel drained and unseen. It's not that their effort isn't appreciated, it's that it's too available to be cherished. When a man doesn't feel your absence, he has no reason to reflect on your worth. He assumes you'll always be there, no matter what effort he puts in. But when you gracefully take a step back, not in anger, not with a dramatic exit, but with quiet confidence, he begins to notice the gap. He feels the shift. He starts to remember the way your energy filled space in his life that now feels a little emptier without it. And then when you do send a message, it lands differently. A single line, a thoughtful note, or a light-hearted check-in carries more weight because it's not competing with noise. It feels like a gift, not an obligation. Because you weren't flooding his inbox every day, the moment you do reach out feels special again. That's what presence means when it follows absence. It has power, depth, and emotion. This rhythm of being occasionally unavailable but emotionally rich when present is what sets you apart. Most people are either chasing or ghosting. You're doing neither. You're rooted. You're not afraid of space because you trust what you bring into someone's life. You know that silence isn't always rejection, it's often reflection. And you're not afraid to let someone sit in that space and decide what you mean to them. The real strength here isn't in being distant, it's in not fearing distance. You're not withholding love or connection out of spite. You're simply not giving it away to someone who hasn't shown they value it. That's self-respect. That's emotional maturity. And that's the kind of energy that makes people stop and think about what they had and what they might be losing. You don't have to be loud to be remembered. Sometimes the quietest shift in your behavior says everything. When he doesn't get that usual message from you, when he checks his phone and finds silence where there used to be attention, it starts to affect him. Slowly at first, then all at once. That's when he starts to miss you. Not just because you're gone, but because your absence feels different. It carries weight. It feels intentional. It feels like something worth chasing. And here's the final truth. When someone truly cares, they will notice. They will feel it. They will reach out. And when they do, you have the choice to re-engage with grace and strength. You meet them with presence, not punishment. But now it's on your terms. And that balance, the quiet confidence of letting space speak for you, is what makes the difference between being forgotten and being unforgettable.